Hi, this is your host Abdul Bhartia and welcome to TFR Newsroom. And today we have with us once again Rupesh Chokshi, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Application Security at Akamai. Rupesh, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. So good to talk about so many things that are going on.
Right. And I think the biggest topic is your API security product has received PCI DSS compliance. Of course, we'll talk in detail about that. Let's quickly talk about API security product. Talk about, all the offering that you have. What does it do?
We've spoken before kind of had a macro messaging, right? Is that we've seen API security become more and more important for the customers and all different industries and verticals, financial services, healthcare, across the board, commerce, etc., airline industry, And the idea is that customers will continue to digitize, right? They will continue to expand their digital footprint. APIs is a very proven, scaled methodology of interacting with, applications, etc. And API security focuses on two or three of these very important dimensions of discovery and posture, right? Like customers want to know, hey, how many APIs do I have? And what's happening with those? And are there known vulnerabilities that I need to do something about, right? So just discovery posture plays a big role. Then you get into runtime, you get into the detections, you get into sort of, finding if there is some business logic abuse going on, finding other kind of attacks that are going on. And then from there, you have this sort of, mitigation or blocking or protecting that you do. And there's also opportunities to expand with, further API testing and going more kind of shift left, right? And we can go deeper into all of those. But those are the big sort of, product capabilities that we need to think about.
And can you also talk about API security versus, just regular security? We are talking a lot about API security these days because we kind of live in an API-driven world. No matter where you look at everything, we're just plugging into the API. So talk about the API security also.
So definitely we live in a very, connected world and more things are happening, right? If you think about just sort of, what's happening, again, going back to the digitization, the connected world, and, there's so many examples, whether in healthcare, you have this whole sort of, digitization of, what do you do with the aging in place or connecting patients with, remote services, et cetera, or, financial services, or even, travel as that's starting to pick up post pandemic. We genuinely believe that, with this kind of attack surface and a new threat landscape, the attackers and the bad guys are finding so many different ways, right? One example I will share is, we're working with a customer, is a sort of conglomerate, but they have a retail business and they have a loyalty program, right? So customers would have loyalty points. And the attackers, utilized some API abuse logic to go, kind of penetrate that. And then they were, utilizing those loyalty points to do fraud, fraud in hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So there's like so many different motivations that we are seeing, across the board. And there have been companies that have had to publicly acknowledge that they've had breaches or kind of data extraction or other challenges. And through the forensics, they found that, the loopholes were part of the APIs and the infrastructure that they had surrounding that.
Now let's talk about the importance of PCI DSS compliance for Akamai, for this product, and for the customers.
Part of any security product is to learn and understand the data and the transactions that take place and really trying to figure out, what is the good transactions, what are the bad ones, what's happening with the attack, etc. So a lot of security and intelligence that is AI powered for security is based upon the data and the movement of the data, etc. So you often, hear about having certifications when you are handling, sensitive data and PAI data, etc. Right? So PCI compliance, DSS4 version 4 is a marquee industry standards, right? That is so applicable every time we do credit card transactions, it comes up. But having the product certified, because we are, kind of going through all of this information and data for the customers, we tokenize some of that data, encrypt it. And so we're kind of very, careful in how we handle all of these things. And the certification is another sort of, industry stamp and confirmation about the best in class practices that we have to deliver that. It also gives a peace of mind, right? Customers have, hey, I'm in the financial services industries and PCI is important, right? So it gives us an ability to kind of meet those entry point requirements. But also, underneath PCI, we are making sure that all our processes and our capabilities and our systems are all sort of, meeting the regulatory environment guidelines, but also robust to make sure we're keeping it all tight and together for customers.
What kind of industries or customers you can name or not name, it's totally your prerogative, but they rely on Akamai's API security products?
One of the things we talk about is just the growth that we have seen, right, across the full vertical space. And I'll start with, definitely the financial industry and the fintech and the banks and the insurance companies and the other financial services businesses are always going to be at the tip of the spear, right? Because of just the amount of cyber, impact that they're dealing with, right? Whether it is attacks, whether it's the abuse, the whole, constant, the bad guys are after them all the time. But hey, we live in the United States, and knock on wood, we have one of the largest and the best financial services industry, right? So, and a lot of very technologically savvy individuals work here, cyber professionals. So they drive that kind of momentum on, hey, we want to look at all of these different tools and techniques to continue to improve our security posture. So we see financial services. We also see, examples in the commerce industry. We see many of the, kind of a brick and mortar or an online store or a combo or a conglomerate, thinking about how to go and secure all of their digital properties and where they're doing all of the interactions. We see the travel industry, hospitality industry. We have one example of Dan Hotels as a customer of ours and what they experienced. There are a couple of other examples of customer names that I can share is, Hi Bob, which is a sort of, HR SaaS platform, is a customer of API security for Akamai. We have Earnin, who is, again, a financial services fintech company, a customer of ours. So, excited that, the customers are trusting us in this space. And it's, again, a expanding, emerging space and a lot to be done, but we have made significant stride and accomplishments in this space. And as we have always talked, Swapnil, on your show, security is not a project. It's never one and done, right? This is a ongoing, strategy and an ongoing program that you're deploying, and you're constantly figuring out how do you get better and better and better, because the bad guys are always finding ways to attack, and data breaches and abuse and so many different things.
When you look at, customer base across industries, what kind of feedback, concern you get from them that these are some of the solved problem, or these are the things that keep them awake at night when it comes to API security?
So one of the things that I hear probably kind of like, top of the list with customers is, hey, I don't know what I don't know, right? And in security, that's a very dangerous thing in cybersecurity, because there are so many of these APIs, shadow APIs, and other things that have been deployed or put out there, or the developers have changed out over a period of years. And over the last 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, 20 years, there's a whole kind of digital infrastructure out there for that company. And just having the ability to do discovery and visibility becomes so important. It sounds very simple, but it's important, right? I mean, sometimes we talk about, hey, you and I are probably the CIO and the CISOs of our home networks, right? And if you go on your Wi-Fi and do some kind of a discovery, you will see 30 devices, 50 devices, depending upon how advanced you are, 100 devices. And you're like, discovery, I want to know what's happening on the network. I want to know what's happening in my digital footprint, right? So discovery, visibility, very important. From there, you get into posture. You try to figure out, what are my problems? What does my risk profile look like? Where do I need to go solve for first, second, third? Then you start to get into the whole runtime detection, protections, almost thinking about a XDR kind of a concept, which is full loop. So one of the things that we've done is we've for Akamai traffic and customers who are already on Akamai WAP type of products or WAF type of products, we build a native connector. So the ability to kind of take all of that customer data into the API security detection clouds and be able to kind of detect and provide the insights to the customers on how do you mitigate. And we have built a reverse loop, kind of closed loop mechanism, which says that if the customer chooses through automation, we can block it on our WAF also. So kind of send the data, analyze it, decide to block it, we can block it, right? So it becomes a very powerful sort of, kind of rapid response system, which is very much needed, right? Because a lot of what is happening is just unbelievable. Like, I mean, we get to see my researchers, my threat researchers, my data scientists, the technical teams, they bring forward some of these examples or use cases, and sometimes, customers are making simple mistakes or, they're like, I remember there was one example of a customer where the internal team had set up the password and the username for their end users kind of same. So they were like trying to, minimize the work effort on their time. But through our discovery process, through our detections, we found that 11% of their was like the same. So clearly that is open to abuse and it is opening up sort of, for the bad guys, right? So we saw some of those things and we were able to bring forward for our customers.
And you're talking about your own research. You folks also came up with a report or research in March, if I'm not wrong,
yeah,
where it was, I think, 29% attacks were targeting API. Can you talk about finding out the research, which can also kind of, the discussion that we had, so it will kind of validate those as well?
Yeah, definitely. So we published a SOTI report, as we call it, or a state of the internet report, and it was focused on APIs. And, again, the results were not what we thought, but just, very concerning, which is, 1/3 or almost 30% of the web attacks were targeted, APIs, right? So you start to see this kind of attack vector that we talked about and just, bad guys penetrating and finding ways to do that. And we learned a lot, right? We learned that, what industries are being attacked. We learned that, what's happening from a geographical perspective, North America, EMEA, APJ, etc. We also learned that, some of the more traditional tools are not equipped to handle, what we were seeing from the adversaries. So a combination of these learnings have kind of, again, brought forward and heightened the need and the thinking and the evolution of the API security product needs and the portfolio and overall expansion of that sort of, protection and industry.
What is the driver behind this growth? And of course, today's announcement is another example of how Akamai is evolving to address this demand.
We are very happy with the customer sort of, adoption, right? And the 200% growth that you mentioned is, we're thrilled. The teams have done a lot of, hard work in this space from the acquisition we had done last RSA timeframe in April, May. So I think what is driving in terms of the demand is a couple of things, right? So one is just like the threat landscape and what's happening in the industry in general and how APIs have become so prominent for the bad guys, from an attack perspective. But it's also the work that we have done where it is, really easy to use or the ease of integration. When you think about security products, it's very important that they are sort of, enablers rather than sort of, being very intrusive, right? Because that takes a lot of friction for customers to sort of, adopt. And there's all these discussions on should we do it, not do it, how easy, difficult. So we've really seen the work that the teams have done with the native connector, with the mitigation, ease of use and ease of integrations, and just the ability to provide that sort of robust discovery back very rapidly, the ability to provide ways to or examples of how you can go fix some of these things. And this is a expansive kind of ecosystem, right? So two examples. What do I mean by that? So one is for API security, you need a lot of different integrations, right? So integrations that we've done with Apigee or Kong or other kind of API gateways to take the customer traffic in and deliver, through the detection cloud, all the visibility. And then the other thing we did is, earlier, in the year, we announced a technical alliance or relationship with Apiro. So Apiro focuses in the ASPM space and kind of a little bit more helping customers, with shift left and code to runtime type of concepts that the partnership of Apiro and Akamai brings forward. So we are seeing, again, great demand from the customer, a lot of adoption, because we are starting to put pieces of these puzzles together, make it easy, deliver the robust results very quickly. Again, like the timing of it plays a big role, like going back to the retailer that was experiencing sort of, abuse of the loyalty program. And we were able to find that, while we were doing a proof of concept, right? So then it's like, okay, we got to go fast on some of these things, and how quickly can we deploy? How quickly can we scale? How quickly can we, start to meet the customer needs?
When we talk about API, of course, we kind of live in an API-centric world. If you look at the whole cloud native landscape, I mean, of course, cloud is a big thing. We have seen a lot of tool sprawl, a lot of vendor sprawl. New technologies keep coming in. Teams, they do want to leverage these new technologies, but that also make the security teams so sweat. Every time you add something new, it adds to complexity. It needs to it kind of leads to security holes. How does Akamai's API security product kind of enables teams to keep dipping their toes in the latest technologies without compromising on security?
It's a great question, and I don't envy the challenge and the predicament that the CISOs are in, right? On one hand, they're responsible to the board to say, hey, we can all be comfortable that everything is kind of protected and we have the right kind of posture and we have the right kind of risk profiles, etc. But then they get bombarded with, hey, there's a point solution for everything, right? So you want to go secure your coffee machine, you do A. If you want to secure your network, you do B. If you want to secure your user, you do C. If you want to secure your application, it's D. And then there's permutations of all of those things. And oh my God, right? It's like, hey, can't manage it. So I think that is a real problem. And it's interesting, right? Because part of the problem is because cybersecurity is, we keep going back to, like, it's not a project, right? You can't finish it. It's a very, very active, and you're dealing with, kind of adversaries on the other side, right? Who are innovating. So there is a push and pull of innovation that is constantly taking, which is why some of these new solutions are constantly emerging. But by the same token, one of the things that we do at Akamai is we think about the whole kind of platform approach and what we need to, do when it comes to application security, which is the portfolio I'm responsible for. And if I have a very robust market leading, web application firewall capability or a WAP capability, and then I have API security, can I deliver, again, this sort of, ease of use and a differentiated experience, across the whole portfolio, across the continuum. So at least the application security space is a lot more kind of cohesive. And there is in the back end, you can, share a lot of threat intel. You can, take all this data and figure out what is happening and kind of feed, all the different sort of, products per se, but take a very more kind of broad, but very kind of focused view of how do we solve these problems for the customers. So it's important. And I think I don't have a a silver bullet. I don't think it's slowing down any time, but we are being very, very conscious when we do either an M&A or how we kind of bring the product and the platform experience together for our customers.
Rupesh, thank you so much for taking time out and talk about, of course, API security, the whole evolution of the ecosystem. Thanks for great insights, and I look forward to chat with you again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Swapnil. Appreciate you having me, and look forward to our next conversation.